coast to coast. What matters, when it matters. This is today's talk. Your world, your news, right now.
All right, you've tuned in, ready for the deep dive? Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
We've got a whole world of news today, basically pulling from the New York Times and the BBC.
Good sources, lots happening.
Definitely. From big political shifts to some really human stories. We're going to try and pull out the interesting bits, the stuff that tells us something.
Kind of cut through the noise, yeah. Give people the key takeaways.
Exactly. Save you some time, keep you in the loop. So where do we start? Maybe Syria.
Okay, Syria. The Times had that piece on tearing down the images of Bashar al-Assad.
Right, after the regime change. It's such a visual thing, isn't it?
It really is, taking down those symbols that were everywhere.
It feels symbolic, obviously, but also really concrete, like turning a page.
Absolutely. It's often that first sort of visible step, breaking that psychological hold.
Yeah.
But the tricky part is always what comes next, building something new.
That power vacuum risk.
Exactly. It's a moment full of potential, yeah. But also pretty fragile.
Okay, fragile transitions. Let's jump over to the UK. Another kind of friction potentially building.
The UK-China relations piece.
Yeah, the Times reporting on this dispute at a Chinese-owned steel mill in the UK.
Right.
It seemed like things were getting closer between them, but now this.
Well, it's a perfect example, isn't it? This local issue kind of blows up.
Yeah. How so?
It highlights that tension. They want the investment, the Chinese money, but then there are these other concerns. Security, human rights.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. So this one dispute at a steel mill, it forces them to maybe rethink how close they really want to get. These partnerships are never simple.
Always pressure points somewhere.
Always.
Okay, let's bring it back stateside. The New York Times has a really troubling story.
The deportations.
Yeah, the Trump administration deporting, 238 migrants to El Salvador?
Mm-hmm.
And the justification. Using a wartime act, claiming gang ties.
That's the really striking part. And the Times investigation basically found not much evidence for those gang claims.
Which immediately makes you think about due process, right? Were people's rights respected?
Absolutely. I mean, these acts are meant for actual war situations, giving the government broad powers, using them for civilian deportations.
Yeah.
That's legally questionable.
Especially if there's no declared war, no imminent threat.
Right. And the speed they mentioned, how quickly it apparently happened.
Yeah, that just adds to the concern, doesn't it? Like, was there any real scrutiny?
It certainly suggests a rush, maybe bypassing the usual checks and balances.
Okay, let's shift focus, unfortunately, to ongoing tragedy. Ukraine.
Yes, Sumy.
The Times reporting from Sumy after a Palm Sunday attack. Hope for a ceasefire just seems gone.
It's relentless, isn't it? The human cost is just staggering.
Especially in those border areas like Sumy. It must be terrifying day to day.
Absolutely. And when you hear that hope is fading among ordinary people, that tells you a lot about the reality on the ground.
Yeah. And then, related to Ukraine, the BBC reported on comments from Trump.
Blaming Zelensky for starting the war.
Yeah, apparently right after a major Russian attack. It's just such a different take from, the general international view.
Well, it really shows how polarized the whole thing is, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Making a statement like that, especially then, just digs the divisions deeper, makes finding any common ground internationally even harder.
Yeah, competing narratives, even in something that seems so clear-cut to many.
Always.
Okay, changing gears completely. South Korea. A really awful plane crash story in the Times.
The Jeju air crash.
Oh,
Terrible.
179 lives lost. And the worst part, maybe, is that the airport operators had apparently been warned. Repeatedly.
About bird strikes, yeah.
And they allegedly didn't do enough to prevent them.
That just makes it so much more tragic. It feels preventable.
Totally.
When warnings get ignored, people die. It just screams questions about accountability, doesn't it? Negligence.
Right. What are the usual measures?
Yeah.
And why weren't they supposedly taken?
Exactly. It points to something systemic, potentially, not just bad luck.
Okay. On a different note, I guess. More reflective. Van Gogh.
Oh, the tree roots story. That was fascinating.
Yeah. His last painting. And the actual tree roots that inspired it still exist in this French village of Aix-sur-Oise.
Incredible.
But now they don't know what to do with them. Preserve them. Let them be. It's this tangible link to his final days.
It's amazing, isn't it, how ordinary roots become so significant because of art.
Yeah.
It's not just about saving old wood, it's preserving a piece of art history, Van Gogh's legacy, that connection people crave.
A physical connection to genius.
Mhm.
Okay, let's swing back to the Middle East. Gaza. Still incredibly difficult.
A very grim picture from the Times reports.
Yeah, two things. First, the head of that Kuwait specialty field hospital claiming an Israeli strike killed a guard there.
And that comes after the earlier attack on the Ali Arab Hospital, too.
Right. It just highlights the danger for civilian places, especially hospitals, in a war zone.
Absolutely concerning. International law is supposed to protect these places. Any hint of violation needs, well, serious investigation.
And then the second Times piece, autopsy reports for some medics killed back in March.
Yes, I saw that, indicating some were shot in the head.
Yeah, just a chilling detail. Really brings the human cost home in a brutal way.
It's incredibly tragic and raises very, very serious questions about how they died. Targeting medics is just a fundamental violation.
Okay, shifting location again. Jordan.
Right. They claim they stopped a major plot.
Yeah, according to the Times. Rockets, weapon making, drones, the works. And apparently it was years in the planning.
Wow. Years suggests a pretty serious, maybe well-funded effort to destabilize things.
Yeah, and Jordan's usually seen as relatively stable in a, very unstable neighborhood.
Exactly. Any threat there could easily ripple outwards.
Speaking of ripples, France and Algeria seem to be having a moment.
A frosty one, yeah. The diplomatic expulsions.
Tit for tat. France kicks out Algerian officials, Algeria kicks out French ones.
And the trigger seems to be this kidnapping accusation.
Right. Involving an Algerian official and an influencer who had political asylum in France. That's pretty serious. Kidnapping someone with asylum.
Extremely serious. It's a major indicator of trust breaking down. Violates fundamental international protections.
Okay, back across the Atlantic. Trump versus Harvard.
The BBC report on the threat to revoke tax-exempt status.
Yeah, after Harvard apparently froze, $2 billion in funding? And just to remind folks, tax-exempt status is huge for universities, right? It means they don't pay federal income tax on their earnings, donations.
Exactly. It lets them use that money for education, research, whatever their mission is. Losing it would be a massive financial hit for Harvard.
Endowment,
Yeah.
tuition,
Yeah.
everything could be affected.
It's a powerful lever to pull in a dispute like that. Political, financial.
Right. Sticking with economics, but focusing on China. The BBC's correspondent had a piece on small businesses there.
And the impact of Trump's tariffs.
Yeah, painting a really tough picture. Goods piling up, levies hitting like 145% in some cases.
Ooh, that's crushing for small businesses.
Just unimaginable burdens.
It really shows the human side of these big trade wars, doesn't it? It's not just numbers. It's businesses, workers getting hammered.
Their ability to even compete just evaporates.
Pretty much.
Okay, circling back to Israel-Hamas. Ceasefire talks seem stalled again.
According to the BBC, yeah, Hamas rejected the latest Israeli proposal.
And the sticking point seems to be what happens after hostages are released.
Apparently, yeah. A Palestinian official said the plan didn't commit to actually ending the war, just pausing it, maybe?
So that fundamental disagreement remains.
Yeah.
The core issue.
Seems like it. That deep mistrust and differing end goals make a lasting deal incredibly difficult.
Okay, a couple of quick hits from Europe. France first.
The prison fires.
Yeah, vehicle fires outside prisons. The justice minister is calling it terrorism.
That's strong language. Suggests they think it's more than just, random arson.
Right, intended to intimidate or disrupt the state somehow.
They'll be investigating that closely, I imagine. Motives, perpetrators.
Then Russia. This weird story from the DDC. A hairdresser jailed.
For fake news, allegedly based on what her neighbor said.
Yeah. Anna Alexandrova. She denies it, says it's actually about a land dispute.
That definitely raises questions about how those fake news laws are being applied.
Could they be weaponized for personal disputes?
It's a concern, especially if the definition of fake news is murky.
Okay, a health story now, but with a sort of sad celebrity connection.
Oh.
Antivirus. The BBC reported rodent nests were found near where Gene Hackman's wife, Betsy Arakawa, sadly died from it.
Oh, wow. That's awful.
Just a stark reminder about that illness linked to infected rodents.
Yeah.
Need to be careful.
A truly sobering reminder that health risks can be hidden even where you feel safe. Public awareness is key.
Yeah. Okay, shifting to Nigeria now. Anxiety growing there.
Over an investment app, right? The BBC reported it froze withdrawals.
Yeah, people are worried they'll lose their savings. Understandably distressed.
Oh, absolutely. You trust these platforms with your money. A freeze like that is devastating. Financially, emotionally.
Really shakes faith in those digital finance tools.
Definitely.
Okay, Peru. A conviction for a former president.
Ollanta Humala, yeah. Found guilty of money laundering.
Related to illegal campaign money back when he was in office.
Another reminder of the fight against political corruption, holding leaders accountable.
It's a constant struggle in so many places.
It really is. Important for democracy, rule of law.
All right, let's end on something a bit more uplifting, maybe.
Okay, I'm ready. What have you got?
Antoni Gaudi, the architect.
Of course, Sagrada Familia, Barcelona, iconic.
Well, the BBC reports Pope Francis has put him on the path to sainthood.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, recognizing his devout faith alongside his incredible artistic work.
That's fascinating. His work is so deeply tied to religious expression, acknowledging that connection between his faith and his art.
A fusion of architecture and spirituality.
Yeah, a really interesting note to end on.
So that's our whirlwind tour for today. Geopolitics, human tragedies, legal battles, economic strains, and potential saints.
Quite the mix. It really does show how varied the world is, but also how interconnected some of these things can be.
Definitely. Looking at them all together, you start to see patterns, maybe, underlying currents.
For sure. Themes emerge.
So maybe something for our listeners to chew on.
Mm.
Looking at all this global snapshot, what the one thread, the one connection or trend that stands out most to you?
Yeah, what underlying story does this collection tell?
Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.